On today's episode of the podcast, we'll be sitting down with AverageJonas. AverageJonas is a very interesting person, and he's got a great many stories to tell. And most people will know him from his phenomenal growth, and I think he's the fastest growing Twitch channel in Europe over the last year. So very impressive stuff there, but it's not by any accident. And in this episode, we really start to discover why. He's somebody that has a lot of different interests, and he has a certain mindset about him that really explains a lot of the successes that he's had. And one of his biggest passions is, of course, performing. He is an exceptional opera performer, and I know that that's something that he misses, and COVID did take a lot away from him as he was no longer able to do the cruise circuit with the performances and had to make the pivot into Twitch. But as we all know, that's turned out pretty well for him. So here's hoping he's able to find a way to marry both the gaming and the esports and the opera singing at some point. We'll have to see. But without further delay, here's AverageJonas. All right, Jonas, it's amazing to have you on my podcast. And it's crazy because I feel like I've known you for a really long time, but you haven't been around for a long time. But I feel like in the general sense of Valorant, so many people know you now, and I think you have such a forward-facing, wholesome personality. It's really attracted a lot of attention in a great way, and I think the thing that people first see is, you're a guy that used to do performances on cruise ships, and that's, very much a part of your identity. And, you're a performer and you're a streamer, but what else is there about Jonas that people aren't seeing? What don't I know about Jonas?
I guess one thing is that I actually have 8 years of university studies behind me. So I have a master's degree in sports science, and I have a bachelor in sport, health, and nutrition, and I almost finished a bachelor in classical music and opera as well. So I've actually done a lot of performance in sports too. Like I competed in rock climbing, weightlifting, volleyball. So I have a very competitive background in sport as well. But that's probably the one thing that it's really hard to kind of get out to the people from the gaming chair.
That's a lot of stuff. Was there something else that, it sounds like, again, as you said, you're a competitive guy. Clearly you're a talented guy as well. You're doing all these different things. Was there something else that you kind of nearly took more seriously than the stuff that we know you for, which is, the performing and so on and so forth? Like, did you get really serious in rock climbing? Were you nearly trying to compete in more seriously on those levels, or?
One thing it was kind of weird for me because I've always had music in my family. I grew up with a father who's a rock band singer and guitarist and everything, and we played the piano since I was 6. But the interesting thing was that music was always a hobby, and when I was studying sports, I was always thinking that I wanted to be some sort of not necessarily a personal trainer, but some sort of PE teacher, or some sort of sport physiologist, or do something within the whole sporting environment. And then while writing my master's degree, I started singing a lot more. I did musicals and some opera pieces, and I did a tour with a symphony orchestra 2 weeks before I was supposed to hand in my master's. That was also a bit rough around the edges, by the way. And I slowly realized that the priorities kind of shifted to that I wanted sports to be the hobby and music to be the work, basically.
It's actually quite insane, the amount of different directions I feel like I could go in here. But I do want to tap into the sports science area, for the moment. Well, actually, first, before we get to the sports science, were you doing all of these things because you're just very interested by everything, or were you sort of looking for something to kind of click, or did you always have a sense of what you wanted to do?
It was weird. My teenage years were a bit difficult. I didn't have a lot of friends, so I chose to do a lot of things on my own. I chose to play a lot of World of Warcraft, for instance, and made a lot of friends over the internet. It was my way of escaping from the real world. It wasn't really, I was always looking forward to come home from school instead of going to school. And that plus, I actually started working out quite early as well because I was tired of being bullied. So that was actually the whole thing that sparked the physical activity thing, which kind of ended up being a gold mine for my personality in terms of how much physical activity has given me and how many friends I built. And, I studied it for 5 years, basically because I realized how much fun I had competing and how much I enjoyed feeling in shape and feeling young and fresh, as you probably know, because you look like you're 21.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that I think physical training is definitely a must for everybody. I'm always like an advocate of it. So I think I had like a similar experience in some respects. I felt like the gaming was a great escape, but doing the physical stuff was something that allowed me to kind of feel like confident being out in the world and interacting with people. And so I definitely feel some, for like, that's a similar story for me in many ways. And for me, like martial arts is pretty important because of that. But enough about me for the moment. Going to sports science, obviously doing so much studying, was there the expectation for you that you would take that a bit further, or how did it end up that you were doing all this studying, then you get to performing on cruise ships, and how did that kind of transition actually happen?
So I mean, this is of course like over a lot of years, and like while being really interested in sports and the whole environment with really active people, this master's degree I could actually take in my hometown. So like there was like this entire community and culture around being active and learning more about activity. And we also we all took personal training classes and we went on study trips. It was just like, it just felt very natural to just go down that direction. We had a lot of fun. We lived very healthy lifestyles and so forth. But then like I said, as soon as I handed in my master's, something like in my head changed, and I was like, I think that like this is something that just for every year, the music part of me just kept like pushing me further and further. And I started a YouTube channel and made some covers and stuff. And I think I just slowly realized that I really needed to listen to the voice inside my head that told me to focus more on music, because I realized that I would go more, I'm already crazy, but I would go really crazy if I didn't listen to that voice and just went for the safe route, because I think going for the safe route is something you can always do later in your life.
So before I leave the sports science topic alone for now, I have to ask, you did a lot of studying in that area. What was the most kind of fascinating aspects of it for you, the bits that you thought were the most interesting?
I think it is that, and this is in theory, this is the same for any field of knowledge. It's that the deeper you dive, the more you realize that you don't know. So like when you're on your bachelor's degree and you learn all the Latin names of the muscles and stuff, you're like, oh my God, I know so much about this. And then you come on the master's level and you start doing studies on this. We did studies where we put like electrodes on people's bodies so I could measure the voltage in their muscle so basically the nerve signal from the brain, and to see like how much activity is there in your muscle compared to if I just electrocute you. We actually did that, by the way. Electrocute them with basically what you call a maximum nerve signal, and see how much difference is there in like the muscle contraction from your own voluntary signal compared to like a maximized. So all these kind of like super detailed things are really interesting, even though it's kind of like a mad scientist kind of vibe over the whole. But the body is so fascinating. There's so much depth to how muscle works, and I think I still use that a lot to understand everything I learn now also.
Yeah, that was going to be like one of the next things I was going to be curious about is, what are some of the biggest takeaways in terms of, how you've applied? Because, I mean, I guess before we get into this question, like I've always been under the assumption of, the more things that I learn, the more systems of logic that I understand, the more that I'm able to bring to the next things that I learn. And so sometimes you see like, as you learn more and more things, there's more and more layers, you start to see that there's all these similarities and like the approach logically to like one discipline to the next, like, weightlifting to video games or that'd be just one example right off the top of my head. Are there things like that for you where, you've looked at some of these disciplines, like maybe singing, you're like, wow, singing and rock climbing, has there already been any kind of weird crossovers like that?
The biggest crossover for me is actually singing and weightlifting, because a lot of it is abdominal pressure, postures, relaxed low shoulders, rolled backwards. So like when I had singing lessons, and as soon as he was like, how would you stand when you do a deadlift? Something in me was just like, oh, I know how to do that. And then I was just like, oh, holy shit. There's so much support in my body now. I can just and suddenly I was like blasting out hundreds of decibel notes to the back row in a 1,000-seat theater, It's actually unreal. And of course, this is all muscle. so having a strong diaphragm that you maybe have gotten from doing deadlifts, squats, and bench press is gonna help you a lot in singing classical music, especially because it's without a microphone. That's the biggest one. It's acoustic projection, right? So you need to have a good voice, but you also need to have a good body to produce a very, very high sound without straining your vocal cords. So that's the biggest one for me, I think.
That's super interesting. So is it so is this, are we talking like intra abdominal pressure that you're able to like create when you're doing the deadlift? And
Yes.
is that something that's like, how much of that is a genetic and how much is that of that is like trainable, and how much is it latent, but you just have to kind of learn how to use it?
Oh, this is getting really nerdy. I love this. So, I mean, the thing is, right, that like, the difference between doing a deadlift and doing a performance is obviously the duration. So, for instance, if I went for maximal abdominal pressure, like I would when I'm going to try to do a max lift in deadlifts, that wouldn't really work for singing. But you could maybe compare like singing an aria to like doing 50 or 60 reps of deadlifts on whatever you need to do that on. So, which means that you need to like portion out your pressure, because the weird thing is that you need to be tense but relaxed. And that's the tricky one, because like you see a lot of pop and rock singers with not really trained techniques. Their faces are like this when they're singing. Like every single muscle in their face is like super tense. When you're singing classical, that's a big no-no, because you close down so much gap, because you need to like open up as much as possible. So you relax all the muscles in your face and your body, not your abdominal though. To like create it's like a guitar, you know, the bigger the box of the guitar is, the more acoustic projection you'll get, like more sound. So it's kind of the same. You have to find a balance between how you can keep it tense for a long time and not be so tense that you kind of like, how do I say it? You know, like tense up. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you like stiffen up. So you need to be relaxed, but strong.
Yes. No, it makes a lot of sense. Like, and I love the fact that we're able to get so much out of the deadlift. I feel like, is this a hack? How many other things can we compare to the deadlift? I feel like this would be a great way to simplify the world for me. The deadlift is definitely a great exercise. Like, I think this is the fascinating thing. Like, you can always just come across like things. You can just do a discipline, and you just never have ever expected to necessarily learn or gain some of the insights that you might gain after like practicing that discipline. That's absolutely fascinating. Now, are there any other exercises actually that you started to see crossovers on? I gotta ask now.
I mean, so on the other half, you have calisthenics, right? Like, which is related to rock climbing, you know, pull-ups and push-ups and dips and muscle-ups and all these really interesting exercises. And I think in general, they have a lot of more transition value for your life as a whole, especially on things like when I'm moving around on stage. So I've, for instance, one thing specifically that I did, this is more like directly connected to your vertical jump, is I played the Cinderella's Prince. And there's a few kind of sketchy scenes where I have shoes with a wooden sole, and I need to jump over a girl on the floor in one scene, and another scene I need to jump over a girl dancing, and she has these dresses that, you know, the ones that go out like this. So that's like a 60 centimeter height or something. And I need to basically do like a jump where like a gazelle, where I like split my legs. Is it called the male split? I think. Maybe it's called the male split.
I know what you mean, kind of. Yeah.
Because so the Cinderella's Prince basically always enter the stage as soon as a trumpet is played. So and then he just comes jumping from wherever he is at that specific time. You have to jump like 60 or 70 times per show. And I specifically remember that it was so difficult because when we were rehearsing, we had training shoes on. But in the shows, we had the wooden sole on, which is like slippery.
Ooh,
so that was one of those situations where core strength and vertical jump actually saved me from not being able to perform and do it, because I literally had to like fully run, jump upwards, and when I land, since it's wooden soles, I would just like slide. I would slide like a meter 1.5 meter on the floor afterwards, and just being like fully tense in my body in the meantime, so I don't hurt anything. But that's also one of those, like, it's a performance thing, but it's actually something that you need a fully like physical understanding of how to control your body to not hurt yourself while doing it, and you're singing at the same time.
That's amazing. It's always like fascinated me, just like performance artists as well, like just the physical feats that are able to be achieved. And I think it goes back to, you know, some of the sports science stuff where there's this idea when your body is getting stronger, it's not just about raw strength. It's like, you know, strength is practice. It's not just about raw strength. It's about teaching your central nervous system about like what signals to send off, and then to control, you know, which fibers to contract in which order, to do the movement pattern as efficiently as possible. So this is practice on top of the elements of strengthening the connective tissues and like the actual raw muscle tissues at the same time. So it's like, I love these two ideas, because, you know, those are actually talking about, like, you know, principal ideas. These are things that I think apply to a lot of things. Like, you know, you could apply this to aim training in VALORANT, for example, that you have the understanding of, okay, well, how good is my raw aiming capabilities? How well can I control the mouse? But then also on top of that is about knowing certain movement patterns in certain contexts. And those are two different things. Like you could take someone who's an OSU god and just drop him into VALORANT, and he's not going to really have as good of a performance as someone that's an incredible aimer in VALORANT who would be terrible in OSU. So it's lots of crossovers.
For sure.
Right. I feel like we went off on a really interesting direction here. You know, I really like this. But there's a lot I want to get to. So, you know, if we kind of fast forward a little bit and we get to, you know, you're now on a cruise ship and you're performing, and we can go straight into, you know, firstly, you know, what was that? So I mean, firstly, you know, you said that you moved to music, and because music spoke to you, it was the dominant voice in your head. It was the North Star that you moved towards, and then you got into this position where you're doing that. And, you know, what does music mean to you? Like, what is it about music that fulfills you so much?
So there's something about performing, especially singing, at least for me, and that is the ability to transfer emotions to another person. So, for instance, one of the hardest things, like the difference between singing and performing, is like that you have an audience and you want to make them feel what you feel, which means that you need to feel it first. So what I mean by this is, for instance, when I played Cinderella's prince, I had to cheat on Cinderella to have sex with another woman, which means that in that specific, which means that in that specific performance, I need to believe that that's okay. I need to, in my head, I need to tell myself that since I'm royalty, I'm allowed to have more than one wife because I'm royalty. So this is something I need. And before I've like convinced myself as a stage persona that this is okay, no one in the audience will ever believe that I'm selling it. And the same goes for love as well. You need to actually feel like you're in love before the audience will feel it. So which means that when you're feeling it on stage, it's finally reaching out to like, for instance, when you're making someone cry, it sounds stupid, but when someone's crying because of some sound and like acting you made, is a very like special kind of thing that I can't find in any other field of work, for me at least. So it gives me something that nothing else can ever give me. It's just a different level of like emotional input, I think.
It is amazing when you put it like that, because I mean, there's a couple of follow-up questions here, but just this idea, it's like magic. It's like actual magic. Like you're actually casting a spell on somebody else. They hear something that you've done, that you've evoked, and they feel something, and there's you can't see the sound waves. It's just that's an interesting like amount of control. It is actual magic. It's pretty awesome. But in that sense, how difficult is it, or for you going through the process of improving at that skill, of trying to evoke emotion and to that effect? How did you get better at that? Was that something that was difficult to do? Obviously, must have been on your mind a lot. How do you get better at that?
I think that the cool thing about performance is that we all have like unique key points that are easy and hard to learn in different fields. For instance, I'm very outwards, so some things are a lot easier for me to do. For instance, I don't have that much stage fright as a lot of other people would have, just because like I just don't care. Like it's like that's just the way it is. Like I'll go on stage, I'll do my best, and either it's good enough or it's not. But at least I did my best, and having stage fright just doesn't really do you any good. The only time I would have stage fright is if I'm going to do something where I actually don't know, like it's not 100% guaranteed that I will perform it well enough. But like, for instance, if I know a piece really well, I've done my rehearsal, basically I've prepared enough, then I won't get nervous because I know that I'm going to stand in that scene and shine and just like steal the spotlight because that's what I want. So, but if I haven't put in the prep work, or if I'm chosen for a role that doesn't suit me, then it's going to be a lot more difficult because then I'm living on like a gamble, you know. Then I'm on 100% instead of like a comfortable 90, which like means that you have one little misstep, you will miss a tone because it's too difficult or something. But you practice a lot to avoid getting in a situation where you have to work on that 100%. You always want to leave 10% at least, because your singing should be so effortless that the acting comes through, and so that you can actually enjoy it instead of standing there like, okay, the vibrato is now about 440 hertz, okay, that's a very clean A minor right there, great. You know, like you can't do that on stage because then your entire personal like emotional response is just locked in because you're standing there focusing on your note. You can literally see some singers, it looks like they're reading off like an imaginary sheet of music. They're just looking at the next note, right? There's no, like, they're not communicating to their audience.
It's really interesting because, you know, right there I'm hearing another similarity between, you know, music and the performance and something like performance in video games and something like Valorant, where you're sort of saying that performance is this, you code it into your intuition, and as soon as you bring things into your conscious mind, you lose the ability to perform as well. And that's something that I think is it's such a struggle in so many disciplines because, as you say, like, you know, you have to be confident. And you're saying, you know, one of the things that goes into that confidence for you is the preparation. But in terms of like you making sure that, you know, you are always performing, have you ever had any hiccups or any sticking points or any areas where, you know, let's say the mental side of things that has thrown you off?
Yeah, again, one of the trickiest roles I've ever played is Cinderella's prince because of how hard it is to like believe all the stuff that he. So the thing that happens, it's Into the Woods is like, this is not like the Disney thing. This is Into the Woods, like the Grimm brothers, the original, more dark version. So what happens is that like in the second act, he's far away from Cinderella. He finds the baker's wife into the forest and he starts like flirting with her because she's alone in the woods, and he finds it very attractive that she dares to be alone in the woods. And just to like backtrack to the rehearsals here, we were 18 singers, and this is a scene where like it's supposed to go from me flirting with her to us kissing, dancing, then I carry her off stage, and then we basically have sex, and then we come back on, and we're supposed to come rolling on the floor back on with microphone boxes on the back, which means that I need to arch my back up while rolling, while having a woman on top of me so I don't destroy the microphone box, while following the conductor's signals on a monitor with a half-second delay. Anyway, so in the rehearsals, this was probably one of the biggest kind of like changing points for me as a performer, because he basically told us to improvise the scene before the director basically said that we want to see you improvise first before we add any pointers. And to me, that's so improvisation is really difficult, and especially in a scene where it's about flirting with someone, getting close to someone with cheesy pickup lines, because you know a prince is gonna be cheesy. He's gonna be like, "Oh, so you're alone here in the woods? Well, how brave of you!" You know, like really like that. And at some point you just gotta grab her and just kiss her, and then the director afterwards is gonna be like, "Yeah, that was okay." And there's 18 people sitting there watching you trying to improvise a real cheesy flirting scene, and for that was really difficult to go through the entire process until being stage ready and just performing this out of like pure passion and just rolling literally on the floor, kissing while singing and dancing. And yeah, that was a difficult one.
So what I'm learning here is if I ever see Cinderella's Prince, I see like a really good performance of that role, I know that guy's a scumbag. Basically, that's what I'm learning here. It's like, it's a scumbag.
There was actually one thing that happened in one of the performances, because the good thing is when you get so into your character, you actually react, like when something unexpected happens, you react as the character, because that's like the kind of illusion you're in. And so what happens was that, like, of course there's some trumpet orchestra that is supposed to like make a lot of sound when I'm supposed to leave. And I'm on the floor on top of this girl and we're kissing. And then suddenly the trumpet horn goes, which means, oh shit, I'm supposed to be somewhere else trying to slay a giant. And then I have to like quickly just get up, right? But what happened was that one of my buttons got stuck in her dress. So when I like rose up, she just like followed up after me, right? So I had to like put her back down and like unwind the button thing. And then I just looked at the audience and I said, "Don't worry, I'm a professional." And then I ran off.
Nice. That sounds like a pretty sick save. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So what's interesting here as well is that, like, you know, one thing you're talking about is that, you know, for music, you're able to kind of, you know, convey and allow people to feel the emotion that you're feeling. That's part of the allure of music and the power and magic of music. But sounds like, you know, acting as well, obviously that's a similar thing in acting too, is really to make people, you know, feel various emotions, and you have to feel them first. So obviously you're not necessarily singing when you're acting, but was acting something that you were also, you know, looking at?
So there's a big difference between stage acting and camera acting, because stage acting has to be a lot more overdone, because people can be sitting 100 meters or 50 meters away. So you like, if in opera, if you're shocked, it's like, oh, you know, if you do that while someone is filming you, they'll be like, get this guy off this freaking stage. Like, you know, so for me, I don't think I've ever considered myself like a good enough actor or wanted to like pursue pure acting that much. Like if a really cool opportunity comes up, sure, I'll take it. But my passion has always been in music and music performance, which means that like I'm a singer that acts and not an actor that sings. Because when you see a musical, you can always tell that's a singer that acts, that's an actor that sings. Like there's you can always see which one they are.
Nice. I'll have to pay more attention to that next time. I just saw with Britt Les Mis in concert, and that was freaking awesome. Yeah. Man, I need to see more musicals. Do you have a favorite musical? Are you a theater goer? Do you have a favorite theater?
I mean, I'm very biased because I played both Javert in Les Mis and The Phantom of the Opera and Raoul. So,
wow.
But those are like my two main ones for sure. I think Phantom is probably one of my favorite characters to play in all musicals, because he's so difficult. Again, it's about understanding the person, right? Because he's such a screwed up guy, right? But you have to sell it, so you have to believe what he's believing in, and that's. But it is something. It is something really interesting about studying such a like mysterious creature, which means that when you're singing his stuff as well, a lot of the time you can like. Sometimes you have to like exit the technical correct way of singing to get your emotion out. So this is something that like a lot of opera singers don't do, which is why I personally actually love musicals probably even more than opera in terms of performance, because we're allowed to like exit the bubble of this perfect performance art that is opera, because you don't have a microphone, right? So there's like not that many choices you have in terms of like if you want the back row to hear you, you have one technique that works. But if you have a microphone, you have so many techniques you can choose. There's even a sound guy that's helping you. Like if you want to do like a really weak falsetto tone to like get a certain feeling out, you can do that. So that's why and that's what like makes the Phantom so cool too. Some of these songs it's from like 140 decibels to like 40 in 10 seconds and 2 octaves difference. Like you could never do that in a acoustic performance. So I think for sure that's Les Mis and Phantom are like probably my 2 favorites. Yeah.
Amazing. It's again, it's so cool to see sort of like the similarities between performance arts, and there's just, and you know, going into, you know, we'll get into some Valorant stuff in a bit, but you know, you've taken on music. You know, we've heard you talk about how much it means to you, and you were performing on the cruise ship. then of course, COVID happens, and it really seems like this completely changed. I mean, has changed the world and has changed so many lives, but it seems like this has been particularly a particularly huge change for you, of course, in terms of you having something that you absolutely love, and it's from the sounds of it, you were still in love with it, and then this was something that was taken away from you by this pandemic, and so how did that feel when you were first experiencing this new outlook of the world where you can no longer do your passion?
So there was a lot of things along the way, of course, here that I can just quickly mention. The first thing was that I only did cruise ship performances like the last year. Before that, I was like a freelance singer on stages and operas and stuff. But then what actually happened was that I was so tired of living on these 4-week, 6-week contracts that I wanted to pursue something longer. And my girlfriend at the time got a master's degree access in Sweden, so she had to move. So I decided, well, she's moving from the apartment, so I'll try something else at the same time. So I started Googling cruise ships, and I just did a Skype audition basically, and I was just sent to rehearsals in London, and we had 21 days to learn 6 different production shows, and then we did 160 performances in 10 months, and we did 60 countries. So we did the Mediterranean first, then we crossed the Atlantic, and then you get to Florida, and then you go through the Caribbean, through the Panama Canal, down the southwest coast of South America, and then we came back up to Brazil, and then that's where we got stuck due to COVID, because one of our guests got sick on the ship. He passed away. He did not, however, infect anyone else, but we were still stuck there, and the government refused to send us home. So there was like a big problem, because Brazil is one of the worst countries to be stuck in a situation like this. So we had to have a dialogue with the Norwegian embassy and the British embassy, because we had a lot of European guests, and we were stuck there for about 2 weeks until we got a chartered flight from Brazil back to Heathrow. And it was a full military escort with like over 50 motorbikes, and in the middle of the night, armed guards, because there was a riot outside our ship because the local people wanted to attack us or send us away, because they didn't want the Corona cruise at bay, but we weren't allowed to leave. So there were like CNN and BBC, like all the cameras were there as well. And it was basically just like, riots outside day and night. We finally got sent to the airport, got flown home. And I remember when I landed in Norway, my father was there he stopped with his car, and I was just so done. That was like, it was such a mental and physical stress. And the travel was like 20 hours of like hazmat suits and masks and gloves and no proper food or drinks or anything. And this was like friends, really good friends that you made over 10 months. And suddenly they told us the day before, you're leaving tomorrow. And then like the entire illusion just like exploded, and everybody said goodbye, and I haven't seen any of them since, which is really strange. And that's when I just came home, and I was like, Mom and Dad, there isn't really much performance opportunities out there, so I think I'll just try to stream for a bit until I find out what I want to do, because I don't know what I want to do right now. And that's when VALORANT came out at the same time. So I started streaming 2nd of May. So that's almost 13 months ago.
Wow, that's a lot has changed in those 13 months. But, and of course we know the end of the story. Part of your story, of course, it hasn't ended just yet, but we've seen the success and the growth that you've experienced, and of course you're on this great path now, which we'll talk about. But was there while streaming was going on, before things started to pick up, before success became pretty apparent, did you ever come upon any other disciplines or things that you were thinking of trying to do, like other jobs or anything like that?
I was thinking that I could slowly go back into cruise ships, to be honest. I had some contacts, and I knew that some auditions would eventually come up. And I knew that also, I'd been running a YouTube channel for almost 7 years before that, where I posted covers and some music stuff, but none of it was like super successful, even though I put a lot of effort into it. So I knew that like being a content creator isn't just like, it's not easy to just start up and do something. But I also knew that right now I was like kind of, you can say rock bottom, but you know, I had a supportive family with a decent economy, so like I wasn't really doing that bad compared to a lot of other people in COVID. So at least I had the opportunity to just stream for a while, and my parents were really supportive as well of basically letting me just stream from my bedroom for a few months, because like I didn't really have much else to do, and which is also why like now that I've grown like a lot and have a very strong economy, I can't wait to like give something back to my parents for like showing how supportive they have been. And I'm so happy that I actually am getting into a position where I can do that, because that's something they would never like. They would always put their kids first, you know, and now it's time for the kids to put their parents first for once. So I'm really looking forward to do that.
And I mean, that's really great to hear that, you know, you've created that position for yourself to be able to do that. And, you know, with all of the success that you experienced, you know, when did you start to realize that, hang on, things are picking up? How did that sort of happen?
So, I mean, so this is one of those things where like with all these years of YouTube, where like I posted a cover of Fix You, Coldplay shares it on Twitter, it explodes, and I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm gonna make it. And then you know, a week later you post a new music video, nobody sees it. It's like a slap in the face of reality. You're just like, oh, it's not that easy. You can't just like be a one-hit wonder on YouTube or whatever. So I always had this doubt in the back of my mind, but I did look at the graphs, I did look at the numbers, and like literally every month there was exponential growth. I remember we had custom games every Sunday, and at the start we couldn't even fill enough people for more than 2 or 3 games before people had to leave. And these Sunday games would grow from 20 average viewers to 50 average viewers to 100 average viewers. And then I got my first Potato Monster Sova highlight video that now has almost 3 million views, by the way. And at some point, like, it's just like from the first 6 or 7 months, I basically grew from an average 10 viewers till average 2,000, which is completely unreal. And I was telling my parents, like, you know, this month my payout is actually like a part-time job. And they were like, okay, but like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't know if this is going to last. And I was like, I know, but like the graph is really like telling me that if I just continue to do this, I don't think it's going to go down. And they're like, okay, but let's wait. And then another month came and they're like, Mom, now it's actually like almost the payment of a full-time job. And she was like, yeah, but you know, we've seen this before. Let's just wait another month and see. And then, Mom, I'm talking to Team Liquid now. And they're like, okay, we get it now. We get it, Jonas. You literally have to be like, Mom, look at the paycheck. You see this? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that is, and the whole Team Liquid thing, that's also an awesome story. I mean, Team Liquid is such a great organization. It's an org that I've always, I feel like there's a lot of orgs over the many years that have been around for a long time, and that it's hard to maintain a great brand and a great image for such a long time, and to grow, you know, steadily over such a long time. And Team Liquid is one of the few orgs I think that has done that really effectively. You know, it's just starting out from grassroots StarCraft community and building into what it is now is really phenomenal. I think it's one of the best brands out there. So it's such an incredible, it's incredible to see that you got, you know, that match happened, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense. Like, what is the working relationship like with Team Liquid, and what are some of the goals that you have with them?
So the interesting thing is that, like, I really early on I was very interested in Liquid, and I had a Norwegian friend who had contacts in Liquid. So like there was like this kind of line of communication that was possible there. But like, I also know that like a discussion like this, like they don't just invite content creators on the daily into their brand. I knew that it was like a long-term thing. So you establish initial contact, and then you just have to have them monitor your growth. And then like they saw that, you know, it was like exponential basically all the time. So at some point they were like, okay, we get it. I think you're a good match for our brand. And like we like the whole, you know, being nice is free is my motto. And like, singing for my people, my viewers, my people,
The People's Republic of Jonas.
The average republic. But yeah, no, and it just seemed like this was like a dream come true, a family match, and it makes a lot of sense. And now that was also why I didn't have to, but I decided to move to Utrecht in the Netherlands to like more streamline this collaboration. So now that I have like management and production nearby, and I was super lucky that I actually found an apartment across the street, because right now I literally am 75 meters from the office. I take an elevator down, I walk across the street, and there's the office. We have great chefs there, so I have all my meals there. And if I do long streams, I take they give me like a takeaway box that I take back here. So like basically Liquid is providing it. I'm actually one of the few who eats at the office and works at home instead of the other way around. So it's for me, that's great, because that's one less thing to worry about. And of course it's expensive to live so near in the city center at the top of a big mall, but it's one of those things where like you just put all the like pieces together and you see like this is easily worth it for like my quality of life, both mentally and physically, just to make things easier so I can focus more on grinding, because I'm putting 200 plus hours streaming every month.
And so what is the end aim for the grind? What are you trying to, so you're getting bigger and you're growing, and you're able to spread your message more, but do you have any plans that go with that growth, for the longer term, things that you want to do with this audience that you're building, this kind of brand loyalty?
So one thing I want to do is definitely to like, because I know how a lot of other creators, they always start with like one very specific brand, like one game, they blow up on the game, and then what you choose to do with that exposure is super important to like keep growing your brand. Because I don't see myself like only playing Valorant for the next 10 years of my life, but I see this as a genuine opportunity to do something I've always wanted to do, which is entertain people and have fun with like entertainment and media. Regardless of if it's singing or gaming, it's still that you're creating an entertainment platform for people to enjoy. And it's just as important to be a good role model, regardless if it's music or gaming. So one thing I really want to do is to branch out into other games, which is also why it's awesome to do this thing like Twitch Rivals with League and TFT, but also to go more back into music, because I think that this is definitely going to give me like an entryway into collaborating with singers who are gamers, because now I'm technically a gamer who sings. And then you have the opposite, which is singers that game. You have Connor Ball, you have Talia Mara, you have Jordan Fisher. You have all these great profiles that also likes to play Valorant that I'll definitely like hook up with and do music collaborations with in the future. And as soon as we get back to LANs and stuff, I'll be the first guy to request an opening show performance on like literally any Valorant event or TwitchCon or whatever. I'll be damned that I'm going to stand on that stage and sing for people to show that I'm more than just a Valorant streamer. So, because then I can have like the ultimate dream, which is to combine my passion for music and my passion for gaming at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, is it as someone that streams, does it feel like in some ways it does have this reducing effect on your like what you are in terms of how you appear as an outward facing character? Because of course, as you said, you've got so many interests, you study so many things, you've got so much in the way of life experiences, but when someone sits down to watch you stream, they see a guy playing Valorant, and that's what Twitch is about. It's about playing video games at the face of it. So is that part of it, in the sense of like making all the content hours and grinding, that does include playing a lot of video games? So it sounds like, I guess I'm answering my own question here. It sounds like that diversification you're talking about is to be able to be more of you through your content. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's like one thing that is I think is important to take the step from being like a decently sized or a growing streamer that kind of follows the flavor of the month or like follows what the viewers really want, is to kind of grow into this streamer or entertainer that like shows the content they want. Because let's be honest here, anyone who starts a stream and blows up in a game knows that like, okay, if I'm blowing up in Valorant, well, most people will want to see ranked Valorant competitive play. on specifically on Sova. Like first months, you know what? First months it would be like, why are you not playing Sova? What's wrong with you? And then when that wasn't a thing, then it was, why are you playing unrated? It makes no sense. And then I'm trying to explain how like you can only duo queue in Immortal and upwards, and then there's this whole this shebang about having delay or not delay and stream sniping, and it's just like a vicious circle. And then at some point you just have to like take back and jump into the driver's seat and say like, you know what? I'm not going to let you decide what's good for my content, because then I'm basically losing a battle against my viewers. And I don't think it's a good way to progress your brand by constantly choosing what you know your viewers would prefer, because then you've locked yourself into a bubble. And that's also the problem with a lot of pro players who stream, because that's obviously different for them because their brand streaming is like part of being a pro player. But what happens if you're no longer a pro player and you want to go back into content creation? Well, then you have to force yourself out of that bubble of just delivering exactly what the viewers want, which is why sometimes I'll be like, you know what, today I'm going to play Apex Legends. I don't care if I have less viewership because this is important to me. Or today we're just going to sing. Like today at my stream, I did almost like an hour, like a mini concert at the end. Of course, you drop viewership, but the people who are there are really appreciating that you can just pick up a guitar, take some song requests, and you build a different relationship to that specific audience that you would never do by just like sweating it out in a ranked game.
It does, and that pressure does, have to, take its toll. I know. I mean, it's been something that's been a really good change in the general sort of consciousness that we've seen over social media in the last couple of years. That generally mental health is something that is being discussed much more openly and shared much more openly, and that's only going to be a good thing as that continues. Have you had your own struggles with that? Because again, content creation, we can make the entire podcast about some of the pitfalls and some of the difficulties of the grind. So have you struggled with anything like imposter syndrome or depression, or like, is there anything that you'd share in terms of your own struggles there, or obstacles that you've had to kind of overcome?
So I'm lucky to say that I've never been like actually properly depressed. I've always been managing to like push through because sometimes there are tough periods. There was like a few really tough periods for me. It's specifically streaming from home in a little village in Norway was difficult because like I wasn't really in touch with the world around me, and most of like the original friends I had, they were doing other things, moved to other places, built families, and I'm like sitting there for myself on a really, really old computer with a GTX 980. Now that could be like causing a depression just alone, to be honest. And there was this like stage before announcing, for instance, being a liquid, that was really difficult for me to deal with, because I think we had like 6 or 7 weeks where I basically had to hide that I had joined Team Liquid. And that was also in the period where I was in Berlin to do First Strike. I was there as an analyst. And then I was 1 month in the Netherlands at the head office, streaming from one of Liquid's apartments with a backdrop, telling everybody that I'm at a friend's place because my computer broke down. So I had to like lie to everybody for over a month. And that was really difficult. And also at the same time, the viewership wasn't like doing great. So like I had these kind of like around from September, November till like early January was like a really difficult situation for me, because like also I've just to say that like it's not a secret, I was always very used to having a girlfriend, but then after the whole cruise thing, like I didn't anymore. So I've been single for almost 2 years now, I think, a bit more than 2 years, which is before that I basically, for more or less the last 10 years, I've always had a partner, which is also something that adds to this whole thing that like, shouldn't I like share this with someone? Like, so for instance, when something like is bothering you, you would have someone there, right? But then on the contrary, I know that I would never be able to achieve this much in 1 year if I just didn't like apply 14 hours a day to the craft of growing as a streamer. And knowing that like it gets better has like been always the motivation. And I think that a lot of people need to learn to deal with number anxiety, because you get so hooked up to your statistics that like if you have if something is going bad, it's going to bother you so much. Or people who switch main games and you drop in viewership, like it's really tough to deal with for people, or if they don't grow that fast and stuff. But that's why, like, you can't connect your entire happiness to like how many viewers you have. But of course, you're allowed to say, today my stream was popping. And of course, that's cool. Like, if you have 5K viewers, like, why would you shut off your stream? You know what I mean? But you have to like find what works for yourself, because I had to go through that kind of like struggle myself a few times where like I felt very alone. And if my viewership wasn't great, I would just like go into myself and like, am I doing something wrong with my content? Why is my YouTube video not being recommended to people? Is my content too bad? You start like going into these processes. But luckily enough, I haven't like ever reached like a proper point of depression like a lot of my friends that I know really well have had during this, because you have COVID as one, you have isolation COVID depression, you have winter depression, and then you have streamer depression, and then all these three hit you at the same time. That's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a crazy one. It's I think for those people not so super familiar with some of the woes of content creators as well, like there's this irony to the fact that, you know, to live a healthy life is kind of like you don't want to ever really invest everything in one place, because you want to spread your risk effectively in a, that's a weird way to put it, but that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Because with streaming, if you put all of your eggs in one basket because you want to grow as a streamer, then, and you're putting all your time into streaming, that takes all the time away from other things like, you know, relationships and hobbies and other things that give you fulfillment and happiness. So all your fulfillment gets tied to this one thing, and then you're sort of playing kind of roulette with the numbers, like emotional roulette with the numbers, and those, you know, you don't necessarily have control over those. So that dilemma is very difficult to deal with, and it's you know, I'm glad that, you know, you've been able to kind of do very well in terms of avoiding any of the major pitfalls, and that you've seen the success, and you know, it seemed to be the case that, you know, you were I mean, you could kind of do anything you want, I feel like, you know, in the esports world, in Valorant at least right now, you know, if you wanted to be talent, you could do that. Of course, you've done some, you know, you've as you said, you know, you've done some shows, you know, you could jump on the desk, you could pretty much do any role you probably wanted. But it sounds like, you know, the future for you, as you said, is opening shows on stage and continuing with the content creation and diversifying. Do you see yourself in Valorant as just like, is that the path that you're kind of locking in with Valorant, do you think? Or do you think that you may want to do some like, let's say someone approached you to host an analyst desk, is that something that you'd want to do?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd happy to like be like a guest for a little bit, or like a sidekick or something, or someone who shows up to like spice things up for a little bit or whatever. But I don't think I would want to like be a main desk host or a main caster, for two specific reasons. First of all, it's not the like direction I want to go with my content, because I know how much time it takes to become good at casting or become good at hosting. And I know that I would have to allocate time to practicing that, because like I have enough integrity to not do something I'm not good at for a lot of people. Like I wouldn't purposely cast in a big tournament just because someone wanted me to, if I knew that I'm not really that good at it. And if I know I'm not really good at it, I either have the option to practice till I get good at it, or realize that there's probably something else I should rather do that I'm already pretty good at. And the other thing is that I also don't want to stop others that are really passionate about working in esports, like casters, analysts, and desk hosts. It would literally kill me if I'm sitting there knowing that someone back home is dying to be an analyst or a caster, and then I'm like, well, they asked, and I was like, I didn't have any better thing to do, so I might as well do it. Like if I like, that's why I should just not ever say yes to that if that's my attitude. But of course, it's very different when it's an actual LAN tournament, and if you can add some sort of like flair to the mix, like doing an opening show or coming on for a little bit and do like a guest analyst for a part of the matches, and maybe do a combination of opening show and or some other music stuff, but then also hosting a watch party, because you could technically do that from a PC somewhere close and stream, and you could still reach out to a lot of fans and give your own kind of like flair on the content. Because I think the whole co-streaming and watch party thing is huge for Valorant, and one of the reasons why it's growing so well. And that's also one thing that we've always been really behind on in Europe, and I'm trying really hard to help with that.
Yeah, and I think so far it is looking pretty good. And as you know, you got your first big one recently, and hopefully that continues. And you know, it's interesting because you know you're talking about just the isolation, sort of like the life as a streamer, and sort of the business of a streamer. And you know, one thing I think that's also quite difficult is. And I know that you know this is an experience for a lot of people, especially now with, as you said, with COVID, we're not really having this in, like, you don't have your, you know, your real life friends or the LAN events where you're kind of around people in person, which is such a different experience than online. And when we get onto online and we're basically communicating pretty much solely through social media, does social media feel genuine to you? Is it sometimes a question of, is it business or is it personal in terms of relationships? Because you know, sometimes I get the sense, you know, that of course, you know, there is this element to social media that we're still being the business part of ourselves, and the business part of ourselves benefits to communicating in a certain way, and it's not quite as genuine, and it looks good to have certain communications versus, you know, in investing your time, you know, elsewhere on a more personal level. If you see what I mean, like everyone sees social media. Is it a facade to some extent? Is it damaging to some extent?
I think that it boils down to your first of all your own ethical value, but also like how you manage different platforms. So I think, for instance, that like you can choose how you want to profile yourself, right? Because you have like the professional version of yourself where it's like you're a brand and everything you say or do can be a brand risk. You have sponsors you're representing, and you have to like find a balance between each social media on how much personality you're providing. Maybe, for instance, like I hired an editor to run my YouTube and my TikTok because I know that like I'm not passionate about like putting my personality out on TikTok myself, but I know that if someone edits highlights from my stream where my personality is really showing, then it's kind of like a win-win where you can do business, but it actually shows your personality. While things like Twitter and Instagram, for me personally, is a lot more personal. It's something I will always be running on my own, because that's where I will like share my random shower thoughts and be the most genuine. So I think that it's down to each and every person to decide how genuine they want to be. Like, for instance, I think it's great that a lot of streamers, like Flixinja is one of my best friends that I made online. He's open about having struggles with depression, and the fact that he uses his platform to voice his opinion about this tells people that it's okay to talk about, because that's like one of those things where it's been like very not okay to talk about, or that's what people think at least. And that's where social media suddenly becomes very genuine in terms of like helping people to open up. But then of course there's the other side of it, which is just like a pure promotional platform. How many you need to post these many Instagram posts and you'll get $5,000. But I think that most people that are on the platform as a consumer is starting to learn when a post is genuine and when it's just straight up like sponsored content, or this is just something that I'm posting to grow. And this is also something that is important to think about when you're collaborating with people, because you need to figure out who's trying to be your friend and who's trying to be your business partner. And that's something I've had to learn the hard way, when like sometimes someone actually like is acting like a really good friend, but then you realize that this is just like straight up someone that, you know, leeching is a tough word, but you know how sometimes people will be extra friendly when they realize they can get a big business benefit out of it. And it's like learning where that limit goes, basically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a difficult aspect to it when you're in the business. Well, when your social media following is your business, it's an interesting one. But you know, moving forward from that, there's also issues in terms of you know, pressures as well. There's like an expectation as to how you should use your social media following. Is that, you know, something that you yourself have fallen prey to, that people are saying, "Hey, Jonas, why aren't you posting about this issue?" Or you know, or is it an issue for you of privacy as well? Has that been difficult in terms of pressure from the from the internet?
I think you can help yourself a lot by setting very clear boundaries for what you want your brand and your personal representation to be before you grow to a size where like it's hard to go back from that. So for instance, like I try to like there's certain things that I will not talk about. Like I will never talk about what happened to my love life on the cruise ship on stream, because I know that that's a really bad idea. You know what I mean? And that's literally one of those, what happens at sea stays at sea, right? And then you have the like the more like apparent ones, where it's just like, what's your stance on different topics? How much do you want to dive into this? Because as soon as you say something, it's out there. And this is the same for your stream. I've had sometimes, so one of the big ones for me that has been a problem for a while is that I'm becoming a big meme in India. Because
oh, really?
Yeah, so
nice.
Because there is this thing called AverageJonas, which is like basically you know, I googled it and there's like more than 600,000 results on AverageJonas. There's YouTube highlights all the way down the page. It's basically like a solo player trying to be me, but then failing miserably, and then they call him AverageJonas. So this is all fun and dandy, right? And for a while, that was hilarious that when I made a bad play, people would call, haha, Jignesh, you know? But then it started getting out of hand, because all my social medias would get like spammed, and I mean spammed. Like 75% of my comments would be just that word on every platform: YouTube, Instagram. Only TikTok was free because TikTok is banned in India. And then I had to like, I have more than 80 different variants of the word banned on my Twitch, for instance. And it got really awkward for me, because someone out there would like clip things out of context, insinuating that I hate Indians, which is completely wrong, of course, because they're like literally my biggest following. Like 25% of my followers are from India. So I had to like be like, guys, I really appreciate you. I really love you. But this meme is not funny anymore. It's completely banned from my stream because it hurts my content and hurts the ability for me to take people personal feedback in comments, actual genuine. I'm just seeing this spam all day long and I don't want it. So please understand that I respect you and I appreciate you following me, but regardless of you thinking that this is funny, it's not funny for me anymore. So that was one of those things where, like, you know, you just have to set some boundaries for certain things if it's bothering you or your brand. And I think doing that sooner rather than later is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I that's crazy. I didn't know that happens. Sorry that happened to you. That's really that sounds like a rough one. But my goodness, yeah, that's kind of crazy. It's just insane, isn't it? What can happen as a content creator? There's so many surprises that can creep out of the woodwork. I had a friend who played Unreal Tournament. This is really before the days of like anyone being famous from the internet, really. But he was a very good Dutch player in Unreal Tournament, very well known at the elite level. And one day, you know, we found out that there was a Japanese blog just dedicated to him. And it's just like it's very random and odd and just unexpected. But it's just, you know, that's the internet for you. Right. So we haven't really spoken about Valorant too much. Just yet, which is fine. Yes. I mean, I guess it just means that we have to do more. So we have.
Oh yeah. Hit me.
You know, I have a few more questions for you, of course. I mean, I guess a really important question is, you know, if you know you had unlimited resources and you could take me on a trip anywhere in the world, where do we go and what would we do?
Ooh, I mean, what if I have unlimited resources and we can go next week? No, but that's a good question, because like obviously I've seen a lot of the corners of the world, but as soon as you're like unlimited economy, it seems like you have to go somewhere that is like a bit special, because like if you go to standard holidays, it's like regardless how good the hotel or whatever it's gonna be, it's still just going to be a 5-star resort with a spa and massage. And, you know, you at some point you can like not pay to get that better, but experiences you can get better. So I would probably do something like either maybe somewhere like a safari in Africa or something like that. and hiking somewhere where no one's hiked before, or oh, I have a good one. This is in Peru. There's an oasis in Peru in the middle of the desert where you can ride V8 buggies and ride snowboards down like these sand dunes. It was my friend's birthday. I googled this, and we were in Peru this one day, and I surprised her. We drove 2 hours into the desert where she was blindfolded, and then out of nowhere we're like, hey, welcome to the oasis. Here you can swim in the water, and there's a hotel there, and we're gonna now ride giant dune buggies and go snowboarding in the desert.
Oh wow! Sign me up. I'm down for that. Oh my god! In the middle of how do you get all that stuff out there? That's crazy, man.
Don't ask me how that works, but it's really strange. It's just like one road, 2 hours straight into the desert, and there's a giant oasis. There's more like 100 different like street buggies there. Like it's one of like the main tourist attractions, obviously, because it's really like magnificent to see. So that would also be one of those things that like is really cool. And maybe go see penguins on the Falkland Islands. They are really cute. I actually put on a tux to take photos with penguins. I did that because
I think I just started watching a series of Britt about penguins on Falkland Islands on Netflix, so I definitely recommend that one. Speaking of which, are you reading anything right now? I don't know if we haven't really discussed books or anything like that, but are you reading anything right now?
Oh, you know what? I used to read when I was a kid. Like I would read all the Harry Potter books and all the Lord of the Rings books and so on in English. I recently read Ready Player 2 because I couldn't wait for the Ready Player 2 movie because I loved Ready Player 1. That was a great film. And so as soon as they wrote the second book, I knew I couldn't wait for the movie, even though the author is like a bit of a interesting one. But I actually would say that I just don't have time or just don't take time to read right now because like I think I work maybe 12 to 14 hours a day. I've had 4 days off this year so far since with streaming. So I'm just like very dedicated to the grind right now. And since it's crazy to say, but I feel like I'm finding a balance between how to focus on my physical health and mental health while streaming, which is working out 3 to 4 times a week and going climbing and stuff. And of course, there is one thing that is lacking, which is a complete like block of social life. And that's a minor / very large thing that needs to be sorted, but we're getting there. But like right now, I have a balance of working all day, working out in the evening, and then spending a few hours at the facility where you can hang out with the Dota team, and soon the Valorant team is coming back, and then going back to sleep and rinse, repeat, basically. So it is a lot, but it's also really important to remember like how grateful you should be for being in this situation, especially considering I've tried to make it on YouTube for many, many years. And the fact that then this opportunity shows up, I want to make the best of it. Like I'm not gonna, if I wake up one Sunday, I feel rested and people are like, you should take a day off. Well, you know what? If I feel rested and I want to stream, I'll click on that stream button. I'm not going to take a day off just because you're telling me that I need it.
Nice. I like it. And I get it. I think we could probably do a podcast, by the way, on all the physical stuff too. I think I love talking about fitness and lifting and martial arts and all manner of things. Okay, I feel like I'm getting to know you better. Are you? How would you describe? Okay, how to package this question. Okay, so what is in the special sauce that makes AverageJonas?
I think it's an endless drive for the things I'm passionate about, and I'm not afraid to make sacrifices to reach my goals, and my goals are very, very high. I think that's like I've always been this way. Like, doesn't matter what I want to do, I want to do it. Like, I'm not gonna if I'm starting to do something, I'm not okay with like average, which is kind of ironic, I know. Like I want to be the best. I want to be the fastest. I want to grow the fastest. And I think there's just like there's so much energy in me when I want something, and nobody can tell me that doesn't matter how many people tell me this is a bad idea. I need to understand that it's a bad idea before I'm gonna like stop doing it. And this is like the same as like any relationship. You're in an abusive relationship, and you're always the last person to realize it, because everyone else around you just like sees how miserable you are, and you're just like, no, I'm fine, guys, this is perfectly fine. And I think I'm kind of like this with the whole working environment too. Like if I'm ever going to be like, okay, you know what, I think I'm working too much now, I need to feel that on myself, because there is a few times, like maybe a few weeks ago, I had like an insane work week with like 76 hours streamed in 1 week. Then I woke up the next day and I was just like, okay, you know what? Today I'm not streaming. But then my body tells me that, instead of like 20 people telling me 2 days like before that, Jonas, take a day off. Then like just wait till I guess I'm stubborn. I guess it's stubbornness is the secret sauce.
Well, I mean, it's working. It's definitely working. So, with that said, I have another question for you, which is, would you like to ask me a question?
Yes. Oh my God. So now now we're halfway, right? I mean, the thing is that I've known you for a lot longer than you know me, because I've watched Counter-Strike for years, and one thing that is really weird to me is that everybody sees me as a mutual now, and these are people that I've been watching for years in broadcasts and everything. What keeps you motivated to keep up the grind with everything you do within esports when you've been in the business for so long?
God damn, that's a strong opening question, Jonas. I think there's a few things. It's an interesting one, because when I started, everything felt like it was sort of out of necessity. It's like, okay, I've got all these skills because I was so into being a professional player, being that good. It's less being a professional player, more so just being really, really good, being the best at a game. And I was like, well, I feel like I've spent so much time doing this. That's what I know. So, started making content around that. And then I realized that, there's so many things along the way that I keep finding that are really interesting, that motivate me to keep following this path. Like, making content was originally what happened, and then being a commentator and commentary, I learned, okay, well, this is a really interesting skill set, and it feels very deep in terms of how you can execute it. There's so many different ways to do it. There is some elements that are objectively just mechanically, you need to be able to do certain things, and you need to understand certain things. There are rules in terms of what works and what doesn't, but there's a lot of space around those rules to kind of make it your own. And so that was a really fun pursuit. And then understanding that I could also maybe keep making content at the same time, and using all of the things that I've learned to help other people. And also, like, I'm so curious, I just want to learn things, and I want to kind of take the best of what I've learned and try to put that out there in some way, shape or form, to kind of keep growing myself and also helping other people. So there's just like this, I've always felt this really awesome kind of it's like almost like a perpetual motion device in that sense. I put in my curiosity and drive around things I'm curious about, and then when I get something back from that, I'm like, I've got to share this. So it's kind of that like cyclical process. And so I think that's what motivates me. And then there's the element on top of that of as to how do you elevate that. So it's kind of like with streaming, you keep growing the stream, and I feel like for me, it's I keep trying to grow as a commentator in my skill sets, but I'm also looking for ways, which is why I'm doing this, is, what else am I interested in that kind of relates to those things and those experiences that I can do to learn more and to share more. So it's all about learning more and sharing more. And I'm obsessed. I'm so competitive, and I'm just super obsessed by getting better at things. So if you add that to the mix as well, then it's like becoming a better podcast host, for example. That fascinates me. You said something earlier actually, which reminded me of a Richard Feynman quote. It's a pretty like pedestrian thing to say. It's nothing. It does, even though Richard Feynman's a genius physicist, that his idea was that if you go deep enough into anything, you'll find it absolutely fascinating. It doesn't matter what it is. You just have to go deep enough, and it will be fascinated. And I feel like that's that's the journey I found with esports. And esports really saved me, kind of like you were describing how, you know, gaming kind of helped you. It really saved me. So I've really grown up on esports as my savior, and I want other people to see that in esports. So yeah, there's lots of different interests there. I feel like I didn't really answer the question very well.
No, but I think I think you touched a lot of important points, and you mentioned one thing also, that you love to compete. So that's why I wonder, how was the transition from being a esports athlete to a kind of a supportive element in the scene instead of like a pure performer? Was that like mentally challenging for you, or was it like a natural next step down the road?
It's a difficult one, because I've always been very conflicted, because with being a competitor, I think is why I feel like I was placed on the earth to compete. For whatever reason, there's something in my brain that tells me that I should be competing all the time. Just always this is voice internally. I just have this all the time. So it just depends on the outlet, and esports feels like the best outlet for me because that's what I grew up doing. That's the first thing that I found or fell in love with in that sense. But the issue is that my time I keep missing the timing, because I was doing it before esports was esports, you know, before the Twitch era, before 2011. And so you couldn't make a living off of it. There wasn't many tournaments. Getting sponsored to even go to a tournament was very difficult. And so although I competed a lot, I feel like I missed out on what is the experience that people have now. And I'm kind of jealous, and I kind of want to experience that. So, it's difficult in that sense. So I had to fall in love with other things. I think that's the one of the life lessons. Like I had to learn this lesson when I had this shoulder surgery that kind of all my life was. I was in a small village as well, like you were talking about, and you know, I did get depressed, especially after this shoulder injury. All my friends had moved on. There was like no one in this village. It was tiny. There was nothing to do. I felt like I was wasting my life. And then sort of my one outlet, my kind of ability to kind of train, because I was like running every day. I was doing gymnastics and martial arts and all kinds of stuff that I couldn't do any of that, and I was all taken away. So that's how I discovered content creation, because I realized that, oh shit, in life stuff can get taken away from you, and you have to learn to love other things. You have to learn to
adapt.
Exactly. So that has been one of the greatest survival mechanisms, I think, because we have to live a fulfilled life, and you can't do that unless you can find new ways to be fulfilled, because life is going to throw stuff at you. Sometimes, you know, pandemic's going to hit and you can't perform and you've got to adapt, or sometimes you're going to get into, you know, you have an injury and, you know, everything will get taken away from you that you know, and you got to adapt. Yeah.
And now we're here.
There we are.
Isn't it fantastic how things work out?
yeah, it's awesome. I have to visit you in Utrecht at some point.
God, yes.
Do you plan to be there long term, or do you have a?
I'm a bit conflicted at the moment on the whole US thing. So there are like a lot of factors involved in that. But I'm definitely staying here till end of year, and then I'm making a decision from there based on the second year of my contract, basically. So we'll see what happens then. But one thing is for sure, as soon as I get my vaccine, because it's a bit problem when I move to a new country, you know, you have to register with the BSN and everything. So there's like a lot of things that have to be in place before you'll be put in a queue. So we lost him here now. He disappeared.
Keep going. You can hear me? Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So. What was I saying? Yeah. So there are a lot of factors to why, but the cool thing is that one of the benefits of being in Liquid is the fact that I can actually choose to work from LA for a while, because we have team apartments and we have a great office there as well. And I really want to connect with both all the people in the Liquid family in the US, but also there are so many content creators that I've gotten to know in NA. And like if you go to the VALORANT English-speaking VALORANT streamers, you'll see that the top 20, 19 of them are from the US, and then in 16th place there is me. So it's like I definitely want to go there for a while, meet all the friends that I've gotten to know over the internet that I haven't been able to play with due to latency issues, of course, and hang out, have a good time. So it gives me like kind of like taste of things to come, because I'm not sure if I want to move, but I think staying there for a month is gonna like teach me a lot about how life would be there. And in the meantime, I'll keep working really hard on saving up enough money so I can actually buy myself a house, regardless of where I want to move, if it's Vegas, Texas, LA, or just staying here. But I do understand that like it is so much easier in a lot of ways to be a creator in the US. Like I'm already kind of struggling to have good collab partners. Like there's a lot less room to work with in EU. Sometimes it feels a bit like I'm fighting a battle alone in terms of like helping the esports scene. And it's a bit rough, but at the same time, you can always like discuss, is it better to like be a big fish in a small bowl or a small fish in a big bowl? So, and another thing is of course streaming schedules. Like I know that if I stream during Indian prime time, I will have more viewers. So would you take the chance of relocating to the US, streaming at a different time, and then having to slowly regain a new audience by reaching out to more people in the US? So there's like a lot of factors involved, and of course also just the fact that like you'll get a lot more sponsor deals by being located in the US. Not that economy is a problem in the first place. Like, of course, everything is going really well, but like there's always this like ambition thing in the back of your head. Like if you're being like ridiculously underpaid for something, or you see an insane opportunity, regardless of if you're already doing fine, then of course you're going to consider taking that to take the next big step. Because like I want to have millions of followers. I want to be able to reach out to every corner of the world with my message of being nice is free, that everybody should be allowed to love everybody, and like that, like spread some more niceness around the world. It shouldn't be that difficult, but apparently a lot of people think it is. So that's why like if at the end of the day, if I need to move to the US to like if it's really hindering my growth to stay in Europe, I probably will. But it's not hindering my growth yet. So I don't see any reason to move yet, because I know that the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I have a really great opportunity here to work a lot and still live a healthy life. And Utrecht is a great city where you don't even need a car. You can walk to everything. I live on top of the biggest mall in like multiple miles, and I have access to everything I need by taking an elevator down. So like, I'm stupid if I move, basically, but I might do it at some point.
I think you kind of answered my what was going to be my final question as well. So, I mean, I was going to ask you, you know, what ways, like once the kind of, if the Jonas story has come to a conclusion, and I suppose that's a poetic way of saying, you're at the end of your life and you're looking back at all of your achievements, what are the ways that you want to have left the world in a better place?
I mean, yeah, I think it's like I touched on earlier. If I'm like able to help more people realize how important, how easy it is to make someone's day better, how you can spend 24 seconds of your day to make 24 hours of someone else's day better. It's so easy. I've done this a few times where I've literally I walk past a random stranger and I give them a compliment, and they're like shocked because nobody does that, but they're walking away with like a smile on their face. And of course, like, don't be creepy. That's not what I mean. Like there's like time and place for everything, and you have to like understand when that is, or like do something nice for like there are so many random like gestures of kindness you can do during a day that like costs you like 10-20 seconds to do, but it's going to help someone a lot. If it's at the shopping mall, helping someone carry something, helping an old lady down the steps, like there's all these small things. And if you can like put that thought in the back of like, because like now I'm reaching out to 10-20 million people a month on different platforms. That's a lot of people, which means that if I say something, or if I'm a bad role model, that touches a lot of people, especially young people around the world, because a lot of kids now are stuck in isolation around the world, and they're looking for online entertainment. So I want to make sure that like if they're watching my entertainment, their parents are not going to be like, oh my God, are you doing that because we're watching AverageJonas? I would rather be like, oh, you're doing that because you watched AverageJonas. That's great. So that's kind of what I think I can bring. And that's also why I want to work really hard to be physically there at big stages, at big platforms, streaming events, YouTube events, or esports events, because I know that I can go there and I can help spread joy.
Well, that's a beautiful message, and I definitely am looking forward to seeing. And I know that you'll be able to achieve all of that and more. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Jonas, for spending the time to talk with me. Are there any final thoughts or closing messages? Anything else you want to say, or did you feel like you kind of wrapped it up nicely there?
I mean, if you have Prime subs, use them on DDK.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Being nice is free. That's what I said. Primes are free too. Oh, I'm just joking. No, I think,
dude, you know what? Like, I'm like so sad because in Europe, and I don't really have a way to like play. Otherwise, because as you say, like you're one of the people you host me every so often, and we chat and stuff, and I'd say we're friends and everything like that. Although we haven't been, as you say, you've been watching me for a while, but we haven't been chatting for a super long time. But we've got a lot of common, and I think we're friends. I think it's fair to say.
We're really good friends, and one day I'm gonna lift you up until all the oxygen leaves your body.
You're the wind under my wings, Jonas. But yeah, I was so super bummed I couldn't play with you because I'm usually in LA, and I don't have ways to play with you down here really. So yeah, we'll figure it out when you come out to LA, and if I'm in the States as well, we'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks, man, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.